Hello and welcome to another episode of What's Inside. Today we are looking at NeverWorld, a lifetime experience. This was put out by ForEver Books, and it's a role-playing game, as you can tell. It's an older one. We're going to call it vintage, because it's from 1996. This is one of the later games that kind of came out right before what I would call the RPG crash of the late 90s. Right when TSR was falling apart and being bought up by Wizards of the Coast, and there were a lot of things in flux. This originally retailed for $38, and it's supposed to be a newer system that, everybody wanted to make their own thing. This has the ROC, or Rock and Roll system. Get it? Rock and Roll. Ha! Edgy. And let's read this for a second. The one true fantasy roleplay game. Players search for individual answers to their existence and group together for exciting adventure. The Game Master tells the interactive story which you can act upon at any moment. This is a game where science will never be more than a mystery, and myth is your key to survival. Every situation you face raises risks. Every risk has its rewards. Alright, so inside we're going to find the Tome of NeverWorld Rulebook, a culture book, Hurani supplement, the NeverWorld GM screen, a 22 by 32 full color map, 2 custom printed 10-sided dice, and NeverWorld post-it style notes. So, let's see what we got here. This one should be complete. I haven't opened it in a really long time. Here's our post-it notes. Excuse me. And it's just a tiny little pad of post-it notes. Not a lot to it. It's maybe 20 pages. It does say post-it notes on it. So somebody printed on actual post-it notes. So that was actually probably fairly expensive. Then we have characters list of metaphysical powers. This is for use with the character sheet. It says please make copies of the sheet. So it's just a little addendum, I guess. Nothing particularly fancy. I don't think it folds out or anything. It's just a thick sheet of paper. But it's got like some additional bits and pieces on it. So let's get into the, on the back's got a cool little art picture. So let's get into this. Here's our GM screen. I'll look at that in a second. Then we've got our rule book, the Tome of NeverWorld. Then we've got our culture book. The dice are in this thing here. If I could get them back out. When you put stuff in storage, sometimes you forget that you did it, and you make your life more complicated later. Alright, so these are just crappy old style D10s. These are the kind of pointy, jagged, deadly things you would get in the old school D&D type boxes and the really old roleplay games. And you need a wax crayon to color in the numbers, a white wax crayon. And there's like a letter W on this one. And the other one has an N for NeverWorld. That's what they meant by custom dice. So the red one has an N, where the 0 I think would be. So it's a percentile system. But these are real pointy and they'll hurt a lot if you step on them. Trust me, I've had a lot of experiences with that. Usually D4s act like caltrops and make your day slightly less happy. But those are technically custom dice because they do have the N and the W on them. So there's that. And here's our map. And here's this mail away thing. So they can create a mailing list. They're out of Wisconsin. Mantowoc was I can't pronounce that. Somewhere in Wisconsin. Some Indian sounding word. So I'm pretty sure these guys aren't around anymore. I'm pretty positive of it actually. But I had heard a lot about this game. I never actually got to play it, I don't think. I don't remember. I may have played it once or twice. But I remember it looked pretty cool, but I didn't really know anyone that wanted to play. Alright, so we got part of a map here. It looks like it's the first half of a map. And it's really, nothing's marked on it. It's just a big art thing. There's no towns marked, no cities. It looks like fan art, honestly. Very much has a rough appeal. So if you're into more indie type stuff, like setting up your own campaigns and stuff like that too, that would be good, but it looks unfinished to me. And it looks, quite honestly, very amateurish. It's not polished, and that's fine. It's a map. I don't really need it to be polished or anything, but some cities, locations or something might have been nice. So here we have our culture book. As you can see, this one's pretty scuffed up. Probably just from being in storage. The binding's still nice. So the book number is 1101. And these were available separately. You can see the $15 price tag there. I don't think the map was available separately. I think just the books were. I know this one was, but I think I actually have another copy of it somewhere. But yeah, so you've got various locations and things listed. There's some character sheet type stuff on the back here, it looks like. Index. The art's pretty crude. It's not professional grade, in my opinion. More like a fanzine would have looked in the 90s, but the binding is really well put together. The book itself is fine. The pages still look really good for being 20-some years old. So overall, I would say it's well put together. It's laid out well. It's got nice banners. The art's pretty hit and miss though. But I won't hold that against them as far as playability goes. I just think it's it makes it look a little more amateurish than it actually needs to be. You can see there's lots of stats in here. There's houses and careers. It's mainly just world building type stuff with a lot of charts that are very useful for what you're trying to do. So yeah, this is definitely a big part of it. It really is setting up kind of a campaign world for you. So you'll want to have this. If you're buying the box set, I would definitely double check everything to make sure everything is accounted for, because it really does help to have all the pieces to it. So here's our tome of NeverWorld. And the back price is $25. So between the two books, you're saving $2 by buying the box set. Not a big discount, but the map probably didn't come with it, or the GM screen. So buying them individually would have been kind of difficult. And there's part of a sheet. OCF and DCF, so offensive and defensive. Mastery skill list. This is a very complex looking set of character sheets here. It's, as you can tell, it looks like desktop publishing. So it's got a real primitive look to it. We used to do stuff like this in college class around this time. And so this was probably thrown together by somebody that didn't have access to a professional graphic designer or something like that. And that's fine. Again, this is not important to me that it looks super professional. It just has a very amateurish look. But according to the page numbering here, this is page 290. So there's quite a few pages here. It looks like there's an adventure after the index. I don't know why the index isn't at the back, but whatever. So yeah, you got your different world building stuff. It looks like it plays more like a cross between Rifts and Dungeons and Dragons. So that's the impression I get. It's a fairly complex system of charts. Nothing that the average person couldn't pick up, but it'll be a little confusing at first. But if you're familiar with 2nd edition D&D and Rifts, you won't have a problem at all. So, yeah, the GM screen, It's very thin. The color is nice. I'll give them credit for that. I like this marbling look. It's fine. But it's a typical trifold. So you got charts on the side that's going to be facing players, which is super annoying. And everything is laid out fairly well. There's a lot of dead space in here, though, that could have been tightened up. Maybe shrink these down a little, move this chart stuff over onto here. I think that would have helped out quite a bit. The other side, there's another chart on the other leaf, which stinks because, you know, you're going to have to look at that at some point. And that means that you've got to move all your paperwork so you can move it or tag it in the book, and that's a giant pain in the butt. So this could have been vastly better. This is very thin paper. I'm not impressed with that at all. It's barely cardstock for that matter. But it is in color. I would have been happier with a thicker black and white with an extra panel or something like that without this stuff on the outside. That's a giant pain in the butt. But yeah, overall the game itself looks like it's okay. I don't think it's going to be for everyone. As a matter of fact, I think most people aren't going to like it. But I don't hold that against it. I like playing a lot of weird old stuff occasionally or flipping through it. Sometimes they have really good campaign ideas, but yeah, this is definitely more of a niche. If you're a big RPG collector, you'll probably want to get this because it is a interesting fantasy setting with a different system that has a little bit more focus on the sword and sorcery aspects. I think it's more hard fantasy than magic. There is some magic, as you can see here, but I don't know. I haven't played it in a really long time, but it was worth picking up, as I recall. It uses the rock and roll system, so that's always something awesome, right? Who doesn't like a little rock and roll? But yeah, I mean, it's probably more of a niche market. You can find it reasonably priced, usually under the original price, about 20 or 30 bucks. But if you're a diehard RPG player, this would be a good one for your collection. But if you're not, it's probably not going to be something you're interested in. It'll be a good change of pace for the players. Play something different. If you're playing, you know, other fantasy games and you want to try something different, this might be good to try. But I don't really see a long-term appeal for it, or even most players having an interest in it. And because it was pretty niche, finding copies is kind of difficult. You can still find them, but I don't think most people want to go through the trouble of tracking it down. But I think the average collector is probably going to want to add this because the different system, mechanics, and, you know, seeing what it has to offer as far as like a different perspective. So it's definitely more in the world of collectors and like GMs that want to try something new. But that is NeverWorld from ForEver World Books. I think they had some supplements out for this, but I don't remember, and I haven't seen them. So I think they might have had one or two more culture books. I'm going to try and track them down if they do some more digging. But it's really hard to find out about a lot of these companies that put out a few things and then disappeared. So I'll keep my eyes open for it. If I have one or if I track one down, I'll do a video on it. But in the meantime, I know the books were sold separately. So you could buy the core book by itself or buy the box set. I recommend getting the box set if you're a collector. It did have the same problems that all these box sets had with the crushing damage, where people would stack them up. So be aware of that. These boxes this one's actually a little taller than the average D&D box, so the split corners are going to be more noticeable because the top's going to be more sunken in from the D&D size ones being on top. So be aware of that too. But overall, I recommend it for collectors. So that's going to do it for this episode. As always, thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel, and we hope to see you on the next episode of What's Inside.